Buck Angel was featured in a ContraPoints video. And before anyone says that I'm a hater trying to cancel ContraPoints, I have watched ContraPoints for years now. I jumped to defend her over the whole Twitter pronouns thing. I literally made 2 videos about it. Who is Buck Angel, and why do we care? Buck Angel is a trans guy who is praised by Graham Linehan. Who is Graham Linehan? Remember the whole Donkey Kong 64 charity stream by H-Bomber guy? That's Graham Linehan. That's the transphobic dude that inspired that stream. So you might be a bit confused now. Why the hell would a transphobe praise a trans guy? In order to understand why, we're going to have to talk about trans medicalism and the trans community right now. There is tension in the trans community due to different ways of thinking that are now colliding and overlapping in 2019 because the world is a mess and we're all going to die and oh my god. The term transsexual is a core part of this whole thing. The word transsexual came out in it's not a movie. Transsexual, 1965. Pretty fast, people started abandoning the word transsexual to adopt the word transgender, because transsexual sounded a bit too much like homosexual and bisexual, and since being transgender isn't a sexual orientation, it did lead to confusion. However, some trans people have started using the word transsexual again in order to differentiate their experiences from other trans people's experiences. Usually it's got something to do with the medical side of transition, and they are binary trans people who identify as men or women. Transsexuals want to be separate from non-binary people. They want their own distinct medical binary category. The problem with making this kind of rigid distinction is that some people will never fit neatly into the boxes. Differentiating transsexual from transgender or non-binary sounds like it could work in theory, but in practice it does not. Some people who identify as non-binary also want bottom surgery and they also take hormones. Non-binary people can also have what could be described as the transsexual experience. People who identify as non-binary can also have very, very similar feelings of dysphoria. Some don't. Experiences differ a lot, and no one's trying to say the opposite. I have never seen a trans person who isn't physically transitioning say that their experience is exactly the same as that of a trans person who is physically transitioning. And not going through the same experiences is fine. I am all for labels. I am all for categories. Yes, words, give us more, we love them. But trying to build a 20-foot wall between each term is where the real problem comes in. The issue here arises when you use the word transsexual in order to signal to cisgender people and society at large that you are one of the good trans people. That's where it gets very, very weird. Because if you are a real, true transsexual, what does that make the people who aren't? I am one of the people who do not fit into one of these boxes. I don't neatly fit into the transsexual box because I identify as a non-binary guy. I don't feel at ease being closely associated with men, and although I'm okay with male pronouns, I don't really aspire to be a man. However, I do inject testosterone into my leg every 2 weeks, and I do want surgery. People at work refer to me as a guy. I live in a binary society. What does that make me? People like Buck Angel build an exclusionary wall around their own transsexual experience in order to prove that they are different. But if you're so determined on proving that you are different from another subset of people in the same marginalized community, you've got to ask yourself, why? Why do you want to distance yourself so much from this other part of your community? What's in it for you? Why are you so reticent about being closely associated with this group of people? Usually, the people that transsexuals really don't want to be associated with are non-binary people, and this is where it gets quite interesting. Society at large is still pretty damn transphobic, but binary trans people still have a shot at integrating into it because they are binary. And society is binary. Some binary trans people use the fact that they are binary as some kind of swipe card in order to enter society. And I do get it. Who doesn't want to be accepted by society? I can't blame you for wanting acceptance. I'm not out as non-binary in my day-to-day life. People just assume that I'm a binary guy, and I don't really say anything because I don't want to have awkward conversations with people who would try and say that non-binary people don't exist. It's starting to become less and less acceptable to be openly transphobic in the classic transphobe sense of the term, but vocally shitting on non-binary identities or non-passing trans people is pretty much still very acceptable. So this subgroup of binary trans people, who are sometimes referred to as trans medicalists, differentiate themselves from this other part of the trans community in order to prove to the mainstream that they are the rational, logical trans people. They fit into society's binary. Non-binary people don't. Non-binary identities are very easy targets. If you yourself fit into this neat binary system and you're desperately searching for respect in a world that does not respect you. If you fit into the binary and society has started to accept your existence, you should be speaking up and defending the people from your community who have not yet been accepted. Dear Buck Angel, building your own acceptance into society on the exclusion of others sucks. Dear Natalie, including Buck Angel in your video is not cool. Why include this guy for one line? Why him? What message is this sending, especially after all the criticism that you've been getting recently? Non-binary people don't want to invalidate your binary trans experience, but they are a part of your community. We have more in common than we do not. The white stripe in the middle of the trans flag is literally there for non-binary identities. No one is trying to take your lived experience with medical transition or dysphoria away from you. Some of us have lived experience that are very similar. Some of us don't, and that's okay. But you are trans. You are not cis. You are like us. When Buck Angel makes announcements like these, he's using non-binary exclusion as a shot at acceptance into a transphobic society. And yes, it is a very tense time to be trans right now. Although we are a lot more mainstream, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's ready to accept us. It's awkward because trans awareness has come before trans acceptance, which means that a lot of people know that we exist right now, but they're not sure if they want us to exist. This is quite a delicate place for us transes to be in right now. Trans people are scared, and fear can lead to exclusionary thinking. For the trans medicalist community, being trans is defined by the binary, and that is because of the mainstream narrative about transgender people. For trans medicalists, their experience is confirmed by their dysphoria, because everyone around them wants a rational explanation for their existence. Everyone wants to believe that trans people were born into the wrong bodies, or that our brains are a different gender to the one assigned to us. These arguments sound very rational, they sound like science, so they stick. Although nobody has yet been able to back this up with solid research. And honestly, I don't want them to. I don't want to have a brain scan in order to get hormones. That would be terrifying. Imagine having to get a brain scan in order to prove that you are really gay in order to be allowed to marry another man. Ever since the word dysphoria was introduced into the DSM-5 in 2013, the word has been used against trans people. Anyone whose experience varies from the binary trans norm has been pushed away, shunned, ridiculed, and blamed for making the transgender community look bad. I can actually pinpoint a few months at the start of my transition where I was in quite a bad place and I got dangerously close to this way of thinking. These were gateways to roads that I could have gone down that would have led to me excluding other people to feel like I was at peace with myself, to feel accepted. But I wouldn't have been. It would have been an illusion of peace and an illusion of acceptance, fueled by shame, by anger, by fear, and by desperation. Lashing out at people within arm's reach because targeting societal transphobia is no easy feat. Just because you fit into the gender binary does not mean that the gender binary is beneficial to everyone. It's fine to be binary, but it's also fine to not be. We need to open up the gender binary to include all of the people who are currently excluded from it. I actually do think that you should be able to use the word transsexual to describe yourselves if you want to, but the way you're using it right now is not inclusive. Using a word like transsexual is fine if you are very vocally defending people who don't use it, and you are still explicitly stating that you are on the same team as them. If not, you're implicitly sending the message to society that your narrative is more legitimate, more real, and more acceptable. Why did you include Buck Angel in this video? If you're wondering why I even care, trans people don't have a lot of representation. I can't just shrug this off and go and watch another political transgender person on YouTube with 800,000 subscribers. Who would that be? Blair White? She thinks I don't exist. If you're a leftist and you're wondering why you should even care about non-binary identities right now, consider how important upholding the rigid gender binary is to fascist regimes. Consider how reinforcing the gender binary can reinforce sexism. This is why intersectionality is important. The strict ideal of masculinity and femininity is very, very important to the far-right worldview. Platforming Buck Angel after all the criticism that you've received. This guy's way of thinking is no secret. What does this mean? Fuck it. Do you know what? I'm a non-binary transsexual. What are you going to do about it, Buck Angel? Fight me.